Today is the third day of the ANC Eastern Cape elective conference. Saturday's open conference session got heated when delegates raised certain grievances. The ANC president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is expected to close the conference on Monday. Let me take you to eNCA senior reporter Aviwe Mtila, who is covering the conference proceedings and joins us now for an update. So, Aviwe, it would seem, unfortunately for those who had hoped that things would go differently, it's playing out exactly as you and I had predicted, that the major stumbling block would be the issue of credentials. Who is and who isn't supposed to be at conference?
Those credentials that were supposed to be adopted just last night, Pratulas, were postponed. Even this time, they haven't been adopted as yet. As we understand, the voting delegates just come back from lunch, and we're expecting, in fact, that issue to be tackled this very moment. Of course, thereafter, we're exporting the organizational report to be delved upon, and we can then possibly expecting the voting to take place. In fact, let me just catch up with the spokesperson of the African National Congress, Aviwe Mtila. Thank you for joining us at eNCA, but we understand the conference has been delayed by a day, and we want to understand the issue of credentials. Where are we at with adopting the credentials?
Well, afternoon and afternoon to your viewers. Well, this is really normal in what happens in conferences. Sometimes you just have to really engage in processes of cleaning your credentials before they are adopted, allowing people to raise whatever issues that may come or arise that have got a bearing on those credentials. So when we went out for lunch, your regional secretaries would have met with the credentials committee to make sure that they really do that kind of a cleanup. But as matters stand, you can hear the mood of delegates here. All of them are ready to proceed with the conference. There is no crisis at all that suggests that conference will not be able to conclude its business.
And what are the major issues that have been raised in the credentials that you're expecting to be adopted?
The reason why we remove media when we deal with credentials, it's exactly that, because it's an internal issue. So we are not going to then use the eNCA to clarify matters that we are not even allowing you to see it in those. Remember, when we deal with credentials, that's part of the conference program. It's called the closed session. So we can't remove you inside plenary and then come through another way of questions and try to clarify what would have denied you, because you are not a delegate to this conference. You are a media person covering that. So what we don't give you during closed sessions, you are not going to get during these sessions. Okay. I'm sure that is understood as a matter of principle. So let's not push the ANC to inflate its own processes because we want to pick a story quickly. It doesn't work like that. The ANC's credentials are dealt with in a closed session of conference, and that part must be respected by yourselves as well.
And can we expect then the leadership of the African National Congress in the Eastern Cape to be elected today?
We are in conference, so part of the things that needs to happen at this is an elective conference of the African National Congress. So we are expecting that when conference rise, it should have concluded what it was convened for, which is to also renew the mandate of the leadership that would have emerged through this democratic process. The reason why we take time and pay attention on these things is to make sure that whatever else happens in conference, the outcomes ultimately could be welcomed by everyone. So any issue that gets to be raised, you have to make sure that you address that to satisfy your own processes and make sure that you protect the product that emerges out of this process.
The reason I asked that is because we were told conference would wrap up today, but now we understand it's going to be wrapping up tomorrow. Is the security in place, given what happened in 2017, to deal with any issues that could come about?
Well, you have been here. Do you really? I mean, look at the mood here. Delegates are quite happy. Things are running as normal. So we shouldn't really imagine a crisis where none exists. There is no crisis. If the ANC, for whatever reason, decide to extend the days of conference, yourselves in the media will have to just extend your hotel stay. But conference is proceeding, and it will have to produce what it was convened for, which is to renew the mandate of the democratically elected leadership, outline a program that will be able to really change the conditions of the people of the Eastern Cape, driven by the ANC, because the ANC is also government in this province.
Okay, thank you very much. Spokesperson of the African National Congress, Aviwe Mtila, really in what we've become to know of Aviwe Mtila. They were talking about the mood of the conference being the mood of the conference. We do, of course, understand that it was supposed to wrap up today, but because of those, we understand technicalities, even the court session that we heard late into the evening yesterday, we saw then the postponement of pushing it back by yet another day. Of course, that would talk to the credentials that we're expecting now to be adopted in that closed sessions, not giving much into what exactly to expect from those closed sessions. But of course, we do understand some of the issues that were even ironed out in court yesterday with that urgent application that was brought forward by some of the members of the Khubusane region that says that not all branches should partake in this conference, given that there are some branches that had their BGM outcomes manipulated. But the High Court yesterday dismissed that with costs, and we do understand now if these credentials are adopted in their entirety, they'll be accepted. In fact, I want to touch on with some of more people that are around here. I'm going to bring in Lungangam from the Khubusana region just to find out maybe some of the issues inside. But Lunga, thank you for joining us at eNCA. Khubusana region has really been in the spotlight, given even the court case that we saw yesterday. I just want to get your sentiments in terms of the credentials that are going to be adopted inside. What are the major issues?
The case was dismissed with costs to those who took us to court yesterday, and those branches are participating, as it has been stated by the provincial secretary, tabling the credentials to conference. So we're confident as Khubusana that branches that we've brought to this conference will all participate, and we're hoping that when we go back to plenary, credentials will be adopted, because most of the clarities have been done by the NEC. The core steering committee looked at those matters, and then clarities were given by the secretary. So I think after we've reconvened, it must be systems go in terms of adoption credentials.
Okay, I just want to bring on something that we heard from the plenary session around Andile Lungisa and his status in terms of him being out on parole. Will he be allowed to partake in this conference?
There are committees of conference that will look at that. For example, there were comrades that were on step aside, were part of the PTT. Those comrades are not participating. And if there's any matter that is transgressing on the core values of the ANC, the conference committees and the leadership here, guided by the ANC, will take a proper decision according to that.
And we're expecting the vote today, Butlung?
We're going to, after credentials, we're going to receive a organizational report. After organizational report by the secretary or the coordinator, we'll go to nominations. After nominations is voting of the top 5.
Okay, thank you very much. Lungang, I'm from the Dr. W.B. Khubusana region, which was brought to court yesterday, but we hear that all those matters have been ironed out even by the High Court, which were present at yesterday, and in fact, those branches will be allowed to vote. Of course, we're expecting these credentials then to be adopted here, the organizational report to be tabled, and thereafter, possibly within today, Bratulas, we're expecting the top 5 leadership, the African National Congress, to be voted in the Eastern Cape province.
Yeah. Part of what our job requires, Aviwe, is that we don't take issues personally. So I was listening to Aviwe Mtila engaging with you. It is par for the cause in what we do that, people will say this kind of things and basically saying the media is being overzealous and we're getting overly excited. Don't try and get what you are not supposed to get through the back door, etc., etc. He's well within his rights, and that's perfectly fine. Ours then is to measure what he is saying. If I hear Aviwe Mtila correctly, he is saying, crisis, what crisis? That's his side of things. Place it now in context then for me, Aviwe. In terms of where the conference was meant to be by this point and where it is at this point, right? If the ANC says it's the leader of society, and also it goes to these conferences to hatch out and map out policies to make the lives of citizens better. Has that even taken place? Juxtapose that for me with what exactly is happening technically with these credentials. Are they doing a head count and having people verify themselves physically? And what is the implication of that in terms of them sitting down, discussing policies and how to move South Africa, the Eastern Cape, forward?
So there would be no conference without the credentials being adopted, Pratulas. Hence, it is then one of the lengthiest processes of the conference ahead of that important vote that elects the top 5 leadership. And you'd be expecting that those issues will be delved inside these closed sessions, where we're expecting each and every branch to be scrutinized in terms of who is eligible to be part of the 1,500 voting delegates that chooses the leadership of the Eastern Cape and who's not eligible. Of course, to avoid such instances where we saw late into the evening some members, disgruntled members of the Khubusana region head to court, those issues, in fact, one of the delays, given that today we were expecting President Cyril Ramaphosa to be closing this conference, and that now has been moved to tomorrow. That will tell you on, while they say that there's no crisis, but there have been pressing issues that have led to the delay of the conference. The Khubusana region is not the only one that has these manipulated branches. We heard yesterday morning that also the Chris Hani region is one of those that have branches that have been manipulated. And here, what happens with these manipulated branches where the BGM outcomes has lists with members, some of them not residing anymore in those particular regions. Some of them are ghost delegates. Some of them have been deceased, or some of them have been in jail, for example. Someone is in jail, yet he appears on the list. So it's those nitty-gritties that get tied up in the credentials, and hence that process then becomes lengthy. But we heard even yesterday that 97 branches from the Chris Hani region will be allowed to vote, no issues there. But those that have been manipulated will also be allowed to vote, but those votes will be quarantined and not be part of the outcomes as yet, given the bearing that they'd have on the outcome themselves. Hence, the question is critical then, how soon will these credentials be adopted, and how soon then will we expect that voting of the top 5 be done?
Aviwe Mtila, thank you for that reporting from East London. The senior eNCA reporter Aviwe Mtila reporting on the situation around the ANC's Eastern Cape elective conference. As you heard there from Pulemabe, crisis. What crisis?